Today's show is sponsored by the ABV Barrel Shop. The ABV Barrel Shop is located in the St. Louis metro community of Arnold, Missouri, and is the world's first single barrel only liquor store. This business is owned and operated by Steve Akeley and Jim Fosnot. Head over to abvbarrelshop.com to sign up for their email and text distribution list. That way you'll know what they have in stock, what classes are coming up, and what barrel picks they have in the works. We are also sponsored by The Bar to Go. The Bar to Go offers a fully customizable carrying case that allows you to take your favorite distilled spirits or cocktail ingredients with you. Whether you're looking for yourself, a customized gift, or logo items for your business or event, The Bar to Go can help. Check them out at thebar2go.com. Use the number 2 when you type out The Bar to Go. Did you know Neely Family Distillery now ships its popular distilled spirits directly to you? To order, simply call 859-394-3258. Tell them the ABV Network sent you. And now, on to the show. Okay, everybody, it's Steve again, and one last interview with one of the all-time greats, and here it is. It's Julian Van Winkle III. What's cool about this interview, it's the only podcast that he's ever done, at least talking about bourbon. He did another podcast with Alton Brown where it's kind of more food-related, and of course they touch on bourbon in there. I mean, that's what he does, and that's, I'm sure, the reason why he was on the show. But this one where he really gets into the company history, he tells us the story of launching the Happy Van Winkle brand, finding this photo and all that kind of stuff. Really, really a great interview. I enjoy it quite a bit, and hopefully you will as well. Check it out.
Let's drink!
Julian Pappy Van Winkle started at the company that would eventually become Stitzel Weller as a whiskey salesman. He would work his way up to president, where he not only led the organization, but became the face of the brand. In 1972, 7 years after the death of Pappy, the shareholders forced a sell-off of Stitzel Weller, and the Van Winkle family was suddenly out of the whiskey business. Julian Van Winkle II, along with his son, Julian Van Winkle III, started their own business, buying back the whiskey they had made at Stitzel Weller and selling it in commemorative decanters under the name Old Rip Van Winkle. Today, Julian continues to lead the organization started by his father with his own son, Preston, the 4th generation of the Van Winkle family in the business. Please join me in welcoming someone we are as pleased as can be to have on the show, Mr. Julian Van Winkle III. Mr. Van Winkle, thank you so much for being with us today.
You're quite welcome. Glad to be involved in this. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome to the show.
Yeah, welcome to the show. So, Julian, this is Steve, and, we want to hear everything about your personal journey in the business, but we really want to kind of start at the beginning of your family's involvement in bourbon. So can we hear a little bit about how your grandfather got started in the business?
Sure. He, it's funny, I was just looking through some old papers today just because I was looking for a date of a photograph, but his dad and his uncle were both lawyers here in Kentucky, and actually, both of them became Secretary of State at one time here in Kentucky, but Pappy didn't want to go the lawyer version, but I guess he figured that out. Before he figured that out, he went to Center College for a few years in Danville, Kentucky, which is where he was born, and which is here in central Kentucky. It's about an hour and a half from Louisville, roughly. And went to Center for, we're not exactly sure how many years he went there, and worked his way to Louisville and just happened to get a job as a salesman for the W.L. Weller & Sons wholesale company. And they were just a wholesale company that sold all different types of items. I've seen Weller Gin and even Weller Zinfandel and rye whiskey, and obviously bourbon whiskey, but several different brands under that label. And he eventually worked his way up in the company and was Mr. Weller, and he worked with the Stitzel Distillery, which was a distillery in Louisville. And I think Mr. Weller had passed away, but Mr. Alex Farnley, who was a salesman with the Weller Company also, he and Pappy became officers of the company. And then with Mr. Stitzel, right after Prohibition came into effect, became partners and worked their way up into the business and began and eventually ended up running the new Stitzel Weller distillery during the Prohibition times, which they were one of the few distilleries that were allowed to produce whiskey during Prohibition. There were a few of them in Kentucky, and they were lucky enough to be involved in one of those. So after Prohibition, he and Mr. Stitzel and Mr. Farnsley got together and built the modern-day Stitzel Weller distillery, which, as many of y'all know, opened up Derby Day 1935 in Louisville. And that's kind of where the bulk of the business started, and the real history of the brands, Old Fitzgerald and Weller and Cabin Still, and eventually Rebel Yell were the four big brands. But they did a lot of private label bottling for hotels and restaurants and all around the country. And those things pop up every now and then. Someone will send us a picture of this Stitzel Weller bottling, but it'll have some obscure label on it from, it could be a restaurant in Boston or something. It's crazy, but they did a lot of that, and then my dad joined the company and so forth.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. Now, your grandfather, Pappy, was obviously the legend in the business. He's revered by people across the world. I mean, even the three of us, obviously. I'm curious if there's anything you can share, an anecdote or a story that sheds a little light on him, as a person. He's this iconic figure, this face on the bottle with the cigar, but you knew him differently. You would have known him behind the scenes. Can you talk a little bit about Pappy as the man as opposed to, the legendary icon on the bourbon bottles?
Well, I'm the youngest of his grandchildren. I've got two older sisters, and I've got two older cousins on my aunt's side, the MacLeods, and they obviously knew Pappy better because he was 15. I was 15 when he passed away, so didn't know him great, a whole lot about him as far as a lot of experience with him, other than holidays and dinners at my grandfather and grandmother's house, and went hunting with him a little bit, dove hunting and so forth, which is a lot of fun. And he was just a true character, as he was known as quite a very colorful character in the bourbon business, and had a lot to do with legislation and some rules and laws that came to be, and very forceful and running a small company compared to most of the big boys out there as far as Seagram's, which wasn't bourbon, but it's whiskey, and then you had Brown-Forman and the Heaven Hill companies, and the bigger companies were out there, but they did well, and he was just quite a fun-loving, very interesting, colorful guy, which could be noticed and read in his third-page column ads, which he ran, and they ran in Time magazine and maybe Sports Illustrated, Newsweek back in the day. And a lot of anecdotal stories that you could tell the sense of humor this fellow had, and the great Kentucky history and dialects and tales that he had. He conveyed those into selling his whiskey. So he was, something like that was really something very unique, and not anything like that's done today.
Sure, yeah.
So obviously, your grandfather did phenomenal things for the industry that are still shaping it today. You mentioned running the ads and the magazines, and I can only imagine he was on the forefront of the bourbon advertising. But the reason why we're talking to you today, obviously, is because of the work that you and your father did to salvage the business. out of Stitzel Weller. If you don't mind, take us through those dark times, being out of the only business you and your father and really your family knew, and then kind of working to build it back up again to kind of what we know as today.
Yeah, it was. I was, again, 1972. I was 21 years old when my dad sold the distillery. So it wasn't. He wasn't the kind of guy that talked about that type of things. He talked about business, but not the real delicate parts and the upsetting parts. So all of a sudden, comes home one day and the distillery was sold. We'd heard something about it. Obviously, knew it was coming, but we heard about it and fretted about it and so forth. But it almost killed him. It really did. He just he was on the other side of the stockholders, the family stockholders that wanted to sell the business. So he was against it because that was his life, and that's all we knew. Yeah. But bourbon was not a very profitable thing back then, and running a small distillery and getting the profitability and aging whiskey that long, which is the hard part, and it still is today. That's the hardest part, is aging whiskey for a long time, because it takes a lot of money, a lot of capital, and a lot of time, obviously, and a lot of space, warehouse space, and so forth. So I just wasn't able to keep it going. So Dad forced to do it, but it was what it was, and he took with him one thing from this distillery, Stitzel Weller, and that was the name Old Rip Van Winkle. So he pretty much got right back in the business after a couple of years of he established a little office building, or an office in a building here in Louisville, and I'm actually in that same building after really? 1972. Yep. Not a different office, but just down the hall. So it's we're the oldest tenants in there. It's kind of scary. It tells you how old I am. But he established and got back in it, and had tons of friends and customers in the business, wholesalers around the country. So that was a slam dunk as far as getting them to sell his whiskey. But he just had an agreement with the people that we sold the distillery to buy some barrels back. And as you all know, it was marvelous stuff. And but selling whiskey was a tough thing back in the late 70s. So he started the decanter part of it, which was always been huge. Everyone has done that. Most every big distillery, Wild Turkey, Beam, and Ezra Brooks, and there were more decanter brands out there than you can shake a stick at. It's crazy because nobody really cared about the bourbon business. It was just buying a bottle of your favorite thing, whether it be a firefighter, or a duck, or a fish, or a car, or a turkey, or whatever. It was just something that was very popular, and those are great, good, profitable things to do. But it went well, but the prices, were getting higher and higher, so it got to be more difficult to sell. But that was along with selling the regular Old Rip Van Winkle in the bottle. He started a 7-year-old product, 90 and 107 proof back then, and that was a very small part of the business, and most of it was the decanter part. So that, it was going well for a while, for sure.
After your father passed away in 1981, I think you kind of ran into some tough times there again. Is that correct?
Yeah, really the decanter part of it faded out really after he passed away in 81. I kept it going, and when he passed away, we were doing our bottling at Old Fitzgerald, it was called back then, our old distillery, and they kindly asked me to take a hike and go somewhere else to do the bottling, because they were just doing a favor for Dad. It really wasn't obviously any money maker for them. It was really a kind of a burden to take care of this little bitty brand, but they did it as a favor. Right. Because one of the guys that worked for Dad, Norman Hayden, was running the operation at that time for United Distillers or Shenley or whoever had him. We had several different people own our old distillery through the years. But I was asked to take my bottling elsewhere after Dad died, so that's when I hooked up with the people in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky, that were bottling decanters also at the old Hoffman Distillery, which was just a bottling house and a barrel warehouse at that time. But the price of the decanters, and they felt the same thing the Hoffman people did, as all the distilleries did. the price got to be above $50, that pretty much was the market on those. It pretty much stopped. So that's when things really got a little ugly, and as far as struggling quite a bit to keep things going. But this was the only thing I knew how to do, and I believed in the product. And we had bought different barrels from different distilleries back then because, there was bulk whiskey available because there was excess whiskey is what it was. So thankfully, that was something I could buy. Some of it being Old Fitzgerald and other distilleries around, but it was all good whiskey. But we put different, depending on the decanter and where it was going, we put different products in there. So that was a good thing. But this little bottling operation was quite a drain. Selling the whiskey was profitable, but keeping the little bottling operation alive was tough because I bought it from the people that owned the Hoffman Distillery, which was the Wertheimers from Cincinnati. I bought it in 1983 because they went out of business. So I just went ahead and had to buy it pretty much to stay in business.
Yeah.
So just selling something that I loved. I knew it was good, and one thing after another, I started getting the whiskey solely from Stitzel-Weller after a while, and pushing the wheated bourbon, recipe around and talking about it, and the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah. Well, boy, the rest really is history. I mean, it's turned into a worldwide phenomenon, which is just incredible. Third generation whiskey man Julian Van Winkle III is the grandson of bourbon legend Pappy Van Winkle. After the death of Pappy, Julian and his father, Julian II, managed to forge a path of success outside of Stitzel-Weller, the company Pappy led for so many years. Today, Julian and his son, Preston, are establishing the future of the Van Winkle family in the world of bourbon. We'll talk to Julian after the break.
Let's talk about the people who make these shows happen. First up is the ABV Barrel Shop. It is the most unique shopping experience in the world of bourbon, as the ABV Barrel Shop only sells single barrels. Owners Steve Akeley and Jim Fosnot select. With over 100 distilleries on board to sell us barrels, we are home to the most unique and diverse barrel pick selections in the bourbon world. By signing up for our email, you will always know what we have in stock. In addition to the single barrels, we'll have a gift shop featuring ABV Barrel Shop as well as ABV Network merchandise. We are partnering with vendors like Art Eatables and Old Man Bay Signs to bring you unique items you can't find anywhere else. We will also have a 24-seat classroom where we are offering educational and fun classes like Breakfast and Bourbon, a series where we pair donuts and bourbon, customer barrel picks, and opportunities to learn from master distillers and other bourbon dignitaries. Best of all, we feature a tasting bar where you can try before you buy. All of this is located in the St. Louis metro community of Arnold, Missouri. If you are in the St. Louis area, please stop by to say hi. If you're traveling in from outside the area, please take advantage of our hotel rates with the Drury Inn and Pear Tree Inn, less than a mile from our shop. This can be done via the links in our Visit St. Louis section on our website. Head over to abvbarrelshop.com to plan your trip. The ABV Barrel Shop. It's where single barrels live. Hi, this is Steve Akeley, owner of the ABV Network. We're sponsored by the Stave and Thief Society. This is where you, a bourbon enthusiast, can expand your knowledge and emerge a bourbon steward. In 2017, I completed my Executive Bourbon Steward certification. It's the most comprehensive bourbon certification program available and connects you with an expansive network of bourbon enthusiasts and professionals. Check out the full listing of in-person and online certifications and join the society today by enrolling at staveandthief.com. Okay, let's talk about the Neely Family Distillery. In 2018, I met Royce Neely at an industry event. He started appearing on our shows, and we became friends during my frequent trips to Kentucky. Today, he is amongst the leaders of young distillers leaving their mark on the bourbon industry. A visit to Neely Family Distillery yields insight on their unique family history, why their products are special, and gives you the opportunity to taste their whiskey, moonshine, and creams. Check them out at NeelyFamilyDistillery.com or visit them in Sparta, Kentucky.
Hi, this is Mr. Bill. You're listening to Bourbon Daily.
And I think, I'm curious, during, I don't want to call them dark days necessarily, but during those times when, things aren't going so well, there's a little bit of an excess of, bourbon that you're able to buy up, but it's, seems like, and, they're asking you to go bottle your product elsewhere, or maybe things aren't just, firing on all cylinders. I mean, I don't want to ask if you were hopeful, that things, but what did you think bourbon would be? Did you see, this renaissance on the horizon, where it turns into what we see today? Or did you think it was something that you would just have to, kind of dredge through, for the rest of your career? What were you seeing then? Yeah. What were you seeing then? What were you forecasting?
Well, I knew it was a good product, and I had no problem, selling people on the product once they tasted it, because it was different, older and different formula than anybody else was selling out there. So it was very unique in that aspect. And, this was what Pappy and my dad were selling all along. Stitzel Weller was older, weeded bourbon whiskey. So having grown up with that particular flavor profile, and it did change, obviously, after we sold the distillery, because for a number of different reasons, but it's still a very good product. And Ed Foote was making the whiskey for the Diageo, or United Distillers people back then, and under the same recipe, just little different circumstances, and it's still a great product. But it just, I never saw this thing coming. Nobody did, but the thing that really, I guess, started my business going was when I came up with the Pappy label, which was the 20-year to begin with, in the mid-'90s, by finding that picture of my granddad and wanting to honor him with some whiskey that I had that was 20 years old, which was actually probably some excess whiskey that I hadn't sold, but it was really good, because I'd never really tasted much 20-year-old bourbon before. But it was a good, we got the package together and sent it to my few distributors around the country, and then it got that great rating from the Chicago Beverage Tasting Institute, and that kind of was the first time that really the phone started ringing in my office for anything in a high demand after, because as you know, when you see ratings, whether it be wine or whiskey or vodka or whatever, people think that's the end of the that's the best thing going, is the high ratings. I want some of that. So that's when popularity really took off. So that was nice. But as far as all this craziness that's going on now, obviously that didn't happen until after the year 2002, 3, 4, 5, something like that. Things started to take off. But I was desperate. I was going to run this thing into the ground, or ride it all the way into the grave, so to speak. That's all I knew, and I believed in it. So it was a struggle. It was not a great time in my family's life, but as far as the struggle to keep it going. But like they say, and you hear it all over the place. But if you believe in it, keep at it, and hopefully it'll carry through and be successful. And it sure did.
Well, we're glad you kept at it.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, we're just three fans, and just to hear the story of the birth of 20-year-old Pappy, that was pretty incredible right there.
Yeah.
It's nothing I do is, this all just pops out of my head. I'm no genius at this, and had a lot of help at everything, including labeling and packaging and the bottle itself. There are different people I can talk about and mention, and just a little bit here, a little bit of help there. So it was a big group effort from a lot of different people that all kind of worked. We had no huge designs of what was going to be produced down the road as far as different ages. They just kind of organically appeared and so forth. So, but it was, I had no idea that I was going to end up selling 5 different bourbon labels at different ages, and they were having plus a rye whiskey. That was a crazy thing to pop up too. So it's all very very lucky and very blessed to have it all happen that way. But it worked out, so we feel very lucky.
Yep. Well, in 2001, I know your son Preston joined the company. So tell us a little bit about his role and what it's meant to you personally to have him in the family business.
Well, he was at the University of Kentucky, just down the road in Lexington, and at the time, my little bottling place, having worked there pretty much from '83, and then in 2001, the day after he graduated, I grabbed him, and he was on the payroll. So as I'd like to describe, we doubled the payroll by having two of us. Couldn't afford either one of us, but we did it. But
so by doubled, you paid him the same as what you made?
No, not quite. So there were two on the payroll.
Okay. Important
I actually didn't get
Evan. Good job.
I didn't get a paycheck for many months. I just got it off and on. Whenever I could, I'd get one. But I was doing a lot of the work myself down there because the people that had worked there had been there a while, and they were older and retired and so forth. So eventually, most of them disappeared as far as the processing, the barrel, the going to the warehouse and getting the barrels and so forth. So unloading trucks and loading trucks and this and that. We had help on the bottling line from several older retiree people, and that were from the area. That Darlene Gillis, my local girl there in Lawrenceburg, was a big part of this. She really helped get some people to work down there in the bottling line. But a lot of that processing, all of it was done by me. So he was a big help bringing him on board because I could loosen the load. So we could double up, and he would go down there and do it himself eventually. And then obviously when the brand started to take off, he could take over some of the traveling and selling and doing shows and seminars and so forth. So it's worked out great. It's not a big company, and it doesn't really, we don't need a lot of people to do this, or didn't. So it's worked out pretty well.
Yeah. You've also have 3 daughters, and they've gotten in the business as well by launching PappyCo.com, a branded merchandise online retailer for Pappy and bourbon merchandise, correct?
Yeah, they've done very well with it. Preston has 3 sisters. They're all the same age, so that would be triplets.
Ooh,
and
wow.
And they, I guess it's been 2 or 3, 4 years. They got the idea to. I think we had an old rip. We used to make up. Preston used to get some ideas and put our logo on sweatshirts and jackets and hats, and have them available to give away, and then sell them eventually in the Buffalo Trace gift shop. But we had an old Rip Van Winkle sweatshirt that she didn't want anymore, so she put it on eBay or something and brought a huge amount of money. And she said, well, geez,
I think Evan bought that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Might have. Probably got a good deal on it, but that was kind of the light bulb went off, and let's just start merchandising this brand. So they've done a heck of a job with it, and it's very popular. So it's great because people can't really find the whiskey. It's hard to get. So they, as far as gift giving or whatever, they'll use the PappyCo stuff to kind of fill in, and they've got all types of different things, anywhere from bourbon barrel aged maple syrup, bourbon balls, and furniture, and glassware, and needlepoint this, and a lot of great stuff. So it's been wonderful.
Yeah,
I know we're fans of some of that stuff. Yeah.
I was just gonna say I smoke the cigars like it's going out of style, and I like you can put the Pappy cigar in your mouth and then kind of get that profile of yourself from the bottle, kind of pretend that you're Pappy, but those are amazing. I mean, they're phenomenal cigars on their own right, and then with the Pappy influence, I mean, they're just they're one of my favorite things out there right now.
Yeah, it's that has been fun to Jonathan Drew with Drew Estates created that cigar, and it's got a little bit of Kentucky fire cured tobacco in there, and it smells kind of smoky. I guess it tastes a little smoky because that tobacco is actually smoked in a tobacco barn for several weeks and then shipped to Louisiana, where it's barrel aged under pressure for a year, and then shipped to Nicaragua, where they roll the cigars and then they age them and then they ship them. So it's kind of like it's about a 1.5-year process at least to make that cigar, but it's
that's incredible.
It's really good.
Wow. I'll be expecting one of those in the mail from you, Evan.
Yeah, I got
Share the
plenty.
love, Evan.
I got plenty. I buy them by the box.
So, Julian, this is Seth. We've heard a lot about your family's history in bourbon, and a lot about what you guys have going on now with your daughters and your son. But what do you think the future holds for Old Rip Van Winkle and for you personally?
Well, it's everybody asks the question, how long is this thing going to last? This bourbon, this frenzy of whiskey, American whiskey. It's great with the rye and bourbon and so forth. Nobody knows that, but our plan is to we're making more whiskey every year and putting it away, and plan to sell more down the road. But as you know, it takes 10 to 23 years for our product to get to market, so that's the hard part. But we're trying to play catch up. But the demand keeps increasing, so the excess supply doesn't show up because there's still more demand. So we're never going to be huge because putting away 23-year whiskey for that many years, putting away whiskey for 23 years takes a lot of space, a lot of capital, and so forth. So it's a tough thing to do. So we're people think we keep our supplies low on purpose to keep the price up, but we sell every drop we have every year. So it's as far as our future, there's so many places on earth that can't get our whiskey, even in this country that can't get it. So with our supply, never going to be huge, because I think that ruins a lot of brands when they try and get too big.
Right.
Sure.
The quality goes down, and that's not our deal. We want to keep the quality as best as we can. So we we'll have plenty of demand for a long time, I think, just because of the lot of areas in the country and in the world that want bourbon whiskey and rye whiskey, are still not being taken care of. So I think we'll be okay for a while, even if the bourbon popularity slows down.
Well, if it does ever slow down, you've got 3 fans here that can certainly help you move some product.
Sure.
I'm sure it will be the first one.
Appreciate your concern.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious. I asked earlier, I had a question about kind of, what Pappy was like in his everyday life, being a member of the family. But now I'm curious kind of the flip side of that, because he is, the Pappy he's such a legendary figure. The brand, the bourbon itself is so legendary. I mean, what's maybe a story or 1 or 2 stories or something that comes to mind where you hear it being told and it's just not true, so you have to sit there and hear a story about, hey, Pappy did this, or I one time, and you, being in the position you're in, it's like, that never happened. Are there any of those legendary stories that are circulating, that you want to address or share or set the tale straight or anything like that?
They're not many things like that. Most of the things we hear about my grandfather have all been in print already, and we use them to sell our product and talk about it. As far as he always sold bottled and bond whiskey until he died in 1965. And then Dad, under pressure from some other people, the rest of the bourbon world maybe started selling 86 proof whiskey, which Pappy was totally against, and he never wanted to sell anything below 100 proof. He always said, "Why ship all that water all over the country?" Producing
Here.
86 proof. So it saved on freight.
I love it.
But stuff like that is great stories like that. He had a zillion of them, and he was fun to be with, and did. I mean, I can see him sitting in his chair right now, smoking a cigar there in his living room, and it's hard to believe that you could smoke a cigar in a house, but he got away with it, and nobody seemed to mind. So that's long gone these days.
Oh yeah.
But, I know you mentioned in some of your previous inquiries as far as this interview about the bourbon and Coke thing that I maybe had a drink with Pappy when I was my first drink with him, and it was a bourbon and Coke, and he was totally blown away by that and didn't like it. But I was 15 when he died, so That never happened. I don't know where that came
That's one of those, legendary things that's not true. I wanted it to be true because I had in my mind when I read that online, I thought, wow, this is great. So Julian is with Pappy. They're at a bar. He orders a bourbon and Coke, and Pappy just, dresses him down. But, you want something like that to be true, but it obviously wasn't.
I don't think I ever went in a bar with Pappy except maybe one of the old clubs here in Louisville, as far as being a kid, just being in the same room with him, because he did hang out in the bar quite a bit, pushing his product, that's for sure. But at 15, I never had a drink with him that anything like that. Although I can't say that I didn't have a bourbon and Coke at some point in my career starting out.
I think we're all guilty of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's pretty bad. I liked some bad wine back then too, but now it's like, how did you really drink that stuff? So it's crazy.
We'll just mark those up to the college years, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
So we've heard a lot about your family and yourself too, and you all have done some amazing things in this business. I've likened, or I've often said that the Van Winkle products are one of the big reasons why we're seeing the huge boom in the bourbon industry right now. So I think, that alone can be, put on that brand, and, so we're all very appreciative for that. But, I think the products themselves are the gold standard, which has helped, push this industry to where we are. And, the Van Winkle Family Reserve Rye is, and, it's one of my top whiskeys of all time. And so
mine too. I think if we had a ton of that, we'd sell more of that than anything.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is totally against, seems like what our family belief is as far as selling wheated bourbon whiskey. But then you have this rye whiskey that slips in there, and it's fabulous. But that's just the quality of that whiskey that we bought years ago and put in a stainless tank and still selling it. And it's actually, this is the last year that's going to be around. The new distillation will be out year after next. So even though you can't find it, if you do, it's a valuable item. But that whiskey's fabulous, and I know some of the people that made it back in the day, and a portion of it, and because it's a blend of two different distillations. But it's fabulous, and I run this stuff by my wife, who has a great palate, and some friends, and I say, what do you think? Because I don't trust myself that much sometimes on some of these things I come up with, and so I do run it by a lot of different people to kind of see what they think, and if I get their go ahead, it's good. But having sold, like I say, aged wheated bourbon whiskey for forever, it seems like, and I know a lot of other people are selling older whiskey now, and that's something I wish my grandfather and father were around today to see how popular what they were doing is what it is today. So, because they just were about 40 years too early.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the products really are. I mean, and I mean that when I say it, they are setting the gold standard for the industry. But with all the accolades and that the products have won, and you being able to keep the business going after all these years, what has been the most rewarding aspect of all of this for you?
It's really just to see the how much people enjoy it. I mean, these are the true bourbon lovers and whiskey lovers. They it doesn't seem a week goes by when somebody doesn't come in our office and just wants to sign a bottle for a gift for somebody, and my son and I'll do that, and just the appreciation that people have for good whiskey. And the Whiskey Fest shows we go to the three big ones in New York, Chicago, and San Francisco, and it's great to see the rush to the table and how much people, I think that's a lot of that is the hype. People want to try it, but when they get there, they say, wow. And they've always said over the past few years, when they have time to say it, because a lot of times now we just kind of give them a little sip and they move to the side till they get another age in their glass. But
Yes.
Back in the day, it was just, they'd sit there and this is, best in show, and talk about how good the whiskey was. So it's always, and there are 200 whiskeys in that room. So then obviously other people like other ones better, but we have a lot of people that just love our product, and that's great. That's what we're here for, is to people enjoy it because we enjoy it. So it's fun to see somebody enjoy the same thing that you put your whole life behind. So that's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Well, it was my prized possession at the moment is a Lot B signed by your son, Preston Van Winkle. So I've got a Lot B with his signature on it, and it's open. I'm drinking out of it. Some people said, "Why would you drink that?" I said, "Because they poured their heart and soul into this, and I'm going to enjoy it the way it was meant to be enjoyed." So. But I mean, that's just it. I love the bourbon, but it's the people behind it as well. And, so that is right now kind of my prized bottle in the house.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is a good one. And we sign bottles for people, and they say, "Well, I'm never going to open that. I'm going to put it on the shelf." And I say, "Please, open it, enjoy it." That's why we do
right.
this.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's nice to have something to go ahead and open it and drink it and enjoy it, and we'll refill it with something else.
Exactly.
Looks like bourbon and make it look good as new if you want to do that. But,
right.
Enjoy the whiskey.
That's right.
Yep. Well, Julian, thanks so much for joining us today. We're going to do the news next. Do you have time to stick around, or do you have to go?
I would like to, but as you can tell, my voice is shot. I'm sorry for the quality, but I've got kind of a little chest cold going here. But,
No, we understand.
They're not going to be able to hear me.
Yep. That's all right. So before you go, could you just tell folks where to, if they want to follow your journey, check in on you? Is there places that they can go online or that type of thing to see you guys?
Well, we have a Facebook page under Old Rip Van Winkle that Preston takes care of. And again, we're just oldripvanwinkle.com is our website, which we had redesigned first of the year, and kind of a new look and new places to take a look on. You can even put sketchy liquor stores on there that are overcharging. They won't do any good, but at least you can maybe embarrass these people that kind of overcharge products. They're doing that for their good customers, but we don't think that's quite the best thing to do. So you can put them on there if you want, and but it's got some good information on there. And of course, my daughter's the pappyco.com website is where you'll find their merchandise.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Well, Julian, thanks again. We really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to talk to us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Julian.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for listening, everybody. Really appreciate it. Take care.
See ya.
Peace.
Before we finish the show, let's talk about some great companies that support the ABV network. First up is Moonshine Still Pro. Moonshine Still Pro has a full line of products to help the home distiller. Whether you want to experiment on the stove in your kitchen or you're looking for a bigger setup in your backyard, owner Russell Creed and his team can help. They have multiple still offerings, accessories, and even grain from their partners at Goldstone Mill to assist you in making whiskey on par with your favorite distillery. They can also help you with some fabricated parts you probably can't make yourself if you are attempting a DIY still project. Learn more or order your still or parts at moonshinestillpro.com. Another friend of ours is the Goldstein family at Goldstone Mill. The Goldsteins offer a variety of heritage and heirloom grains to make the finest whiskeys in the world. Plus, they are more than just a grain company. They are truly consultants to make sure the grains they are providing to you or your business meet your highest expectations. Additionally, they work with mills around the country, ensuring shipping is as low as possible for their customers. If you're a distillery, brewery, or even doing this at home, Goldstone can assist you. Check them out at goldstonemill.com, call them at 217-254-6613, or check in via email at hello@goldstonemill.com. Last but not least is the ABV Barrel Shop. While we don't get to play in the allocated bourbon game because we aren't selling the other products you have to do to get those, we do have access via our friendships in the bourbon industry to some really cool stuff. Have you ever seen your favorite craft distiller selling some really cool limited offerings only in their gift shop? I'm talking things like the hazmat offering Distillery 291 did for their 10th anniversary, or Neely Family Distillery's Papaw's birthday barrel. They don't have enough of it to send it out to distributors, so they only sell it via their gift shop. Well, companies like Distillery 291 and Neely Family Distillery have agreed to sell us 2 or 3 cases of these offerings moving forward, meaning our store will have the access to some of the rarest whiskeys in the world. Way more difficult to come by than the allocated bourbon offerings with a national release. Yes, they will be extremely tough to come by, But if you're a customer of our store, you'll have a chance to get them. Get signed up for our email or text list over at abvbarrelshop.com so you don't miss out.
The Bourbon Daily is part of the ABV Network. For more information or to become a sponsor, please visit abvnetwork.com. Thanks for listening and cheers.
This has been a Steve Akeley production.